Learning English can feel like climbing a mountain, especially when every word looks unfamiliar and every rule seems confusing. Many learners search for shortcuts, but one of the most powerful tools has always been right in front of us: reading. Through stories, articles, and books, we connect with the language in a natural and meaningful way. Reading exposes us to vocabulary, grammar, emotions, and culture all at once. This story follows a personal journey of discovering how reading can transform the way we learn English and open doors to a new world of understanding. Chapter 1: The Discovery. I first realized how important reading was for learning English on a quiet afternoon in the library. I had been struggling with basic sentences, and everything felt confusing and frustrating. As I walked through the aisles, I picked up a small English book without much expectation. The cover didn't look special, but something inside me insisted on giving it a try. That moment became the starting point of a new path. When I began reading, I understood very little, but I noticed something interesting right away. Words I had learned before suddenly made more sense when they appeared inside a story. Instead of memorizing vocabulary, I was watching the language come alive. The characters, their emotions, and their actions helped me connect the meaning more naturally. It felt like discovering English all over again. The more I continued, the more I realized that reading was not just about words. It was about understanding ideas and context. I started paying attention to how sentences were formed, how expressions changed depending on the situation, and how dialogue flowed naturally. It felt like I was learning without studying, simply absorbing the language. I also noticed how reading improved my concentration and patience. English stopped feeling like a race I needed to win and became a process I could enjoy. Spending time with a book felt peaceful, and every page taught me something new without pressure. It became a small but powerful routine in my daily life. By the time I left the library that day, I felt hopeful for the first time in a long while. I understood that reading could guide me, support me, and help me learn English in a way no other method had before. From that moment, I promised myself to read a little every day. Chapter 2: Building Confidence. As days passed, reading became something I looked forward to. At first, it was only short stories, simple dialogues, and children's books. They were easier to understand, and that helped me build confidence. I realized that learning English didn't require rushing into complicated materials. It required consistency. Little by little, the words became familiar, and the language didn't seem as intimidating as it once did. I began to underline new vocabulary and write it in a small notebook. Seeing the words appear again and again in different sentences helped me remember them naturally. I no longer needed to force myself to study long lists of definitions. Reading gave each word a purpose, and that made everything easier to retain. Sometimes I struggle with grammar, but stories helped me see how it worked in real-life situations. Instead of analyzing rules, I watched characters using the language correctly. I learned structure, expressions, and even slang just by observing how conversations unfolded. It felt like listening to the language through the pages. There were moments of frustration, too. Some pages felt impossible, filled with unknown vocabulary and long sentences that slowed me down. But instead of giving up, I learned to be patient. I understood that confusion was part of the journey. Every difficult chapter one finished made the next one a little easier. Progress was slow, but it was real. Over time, I started to feel a shift inside me. My confidence grew. I wasn't afraid of English anymore. I didn't feel lost. Reading had become my teacher, my guide, and my daily reminder that learning a language is not about perfection. It's about progress. Chapter 3. Entering New Worlds. One of the most surprising things reading gave me was access to incredible new worlds. Every book was a door to a different place, a different life, and a different perspective. Through English stories, I traveled to distant cities, met unforgettable characters, and experienced cultures I had never imagined. Learning the language stopped being a task and became an adventure. I realized that stories made the language more meaningful. Instead of learning English only to pass exams, I was learning it to understand people, ideas, and emotions. Reading allowed me to feel connected to the world beyond my own. It expanded my imagination and motivated me to keep improving. Fantasy books taught me descriptive language and helped me build creative vocabulary. Mystery novels developed my ability to follow complex sentences and pay attention to details. Nonfiction books showed me how English was used to explain, argue, and inform. Each genre trained me in a different way, and I didn't even notice how much I was learning. The more I explored, the more I discovered expressions and idioms that no teacher had ever mentioned. Books exposed me to natural English, the kind people actually use. Sometimes I felt proud when I recognized phrases in movies or conversations that I had learned from reading. It was like unlocking secret knowledge. Reading also strengthened my emotional connection to English. I wasn't just learning a language, I was building a relationship with it. The stories made me laugh, think, and sometimes even cry. And with every emotion, my understanding grew deeper. Chapter 4. The Transformation. There came a point when I realized how much I had changed. Reading no longer felt like a challenge. It felt like a daily habit I couldn't live without. I noticed that my vocabulary had expanded, my grammar felt more natural, and my confidence in speaking had improved. Even my pronunciation became better because I could hear the words in my head from reading them so many times. People around me started to notice the difference too. Teachers, friends, and classmates asked what I was doing to improve so quickly. When I told them that reading was my main method, they were surprised. Many believed reading was boring or too difficult, but I explained how powerful it could be when done consistently. I also discovered that reading taught me discipline. Some days I didn't feel like opening a book, but I pushed myself anyway. And every time I did, I learned something valuable. English became part of my daily life, not something separate from it. I saw progress in my writing, speaking, listening, and even thinking. There were moments when I looked back and couldn't believe how far I had come. The person who once struggled with basic sentences was now reading full books with excitement. The fear I had felt at the beginning was gone, replaced by curiosity and determination. Reading had transformed me, not only as a student, but also as a person. I learned that improvement doesn't happen in one day. It happens every time you read a page, discover a new word, understand a new idea, or finish a new chapter. Reading taught me patience, consistency, and the beauty of gradual progress. Chapter 5. A Lifetime Habit. As my journey continued, I realized that reading English was not just a tool for learning. It had become a lifelong habit. Every book I finished made me want to explore another one. I felt proud of how much I had grown, and I knew that reading would always be part of my life. I understood that learning a language never truly ends. There's always something new to discover. New words, new expressions, new styles of writing. And instead of feeling overwhelmed by that, I felt excited. Reading made English feel limitless in the best possible way. I also began to recommend reading to others who struggle with English. I share my story, hoping to inspire them. Some people listened and tried it for themselves, and when they saw progress, they thanked me. It felt rewarding to help others overcome the same challenges I once faced. Reading taught me something important. Language is not just about grammar rules or memorizing vocabulary. It's about communication, connection, and understanding. Books allow us to experience the world through someone else's eyes, and that makes learning meaningful. Now, whenever I pick up a book in English, I smile. I remember the first day in the library, the confusion, the doubts, and the frustration. And I also remember how reading became the key that opened the door to a new life. It didn't just teach me English, it changed me forever. Chapter 6. The Challenges Along the Way. There came a moment when reading in English stopped feeling easy. I chose a book that was far more advanced than anything I had read before, and the first pages felt like a storm of complicated vocabulary and unfamiliar expressions. I questioned whether I was ready for such a difficult challenge. Doubt settled in, and for the first time in months, I thought about giving up on reading for a while. But deep inside, I knew that growth happens outside the comfort zone. As I pushed forward, I learned how important it was not to fear difficult words. Instead of stopping every time I didn't understand something, I tried to capture the meaning through context. Sometimes I guessed wrong, but most of the time I understood enough to keep going. That alone gave me strength. Reading was teaching me how to face fear and uncertainty with patience. I also learned to balance difficult books with easier ones. When a chapter felt overwhelming, I switched to a simpler story that reminded me how far I had come. This mix kept me motivated and prevented frustration from building up. It showed me that learning English was not a straight path. It was a flexible journey. At one point, I even started enjoying the challenge. Difficult books made me curious. They made me want to explore new topics, new writing styles, and new authors. Every time I understood a sentence that once felt impossible, I felt a sense of victory. Little by little, those small victories built confidence and discipline. By overcoming those challenges, I realized something important. Reading teaches you resilience. It teaches you to keep going even when the page looks intimidating. And that lesson stayed with me far beyond the books themselves. Chapter 7. Finding My Own Voice. As I continued my journey through English literature, something unexpected began to happen. Reading started shaping the way I expressed myself. The more stories I absorbed, the more naturally I began to think in English. Ideas formed faster, words connected more smoothly, and I discovered new ways of expressing emotions and thoughts. It was like discovering a second version of myself, one that spoke through a new language. I began writing short notes in English, journal entries, descriptions of my day, thoughts about the books I read. At first, it felt strange and awkward, but as time passed, the sentences became more fluid. I realized that reading had given me the building blocks, and writing helped me put them together in my own voice. Speaking also became easier. I found myself using expressions I had learned from books, sounding more natural and confident. People around me noticed the change and often asked where I had learned certain phrases. The truth was simple. The books taught me. They gave me real, meaningful examples of English in action. I started to appreciate how different authors used the language. Some wrote with simplicity, others with elegance, and others with humor. Each style taught me something new. Without even trying, I began to imitate pieces of their style whenever I spoke or wrote. Through reading, I found a version of myself I never knew existed, a version that communicated clearly, confidently, and creatively in English. And that discovery motivated me to keep moving forward. Chapter 8. The Connecting Power of Stories. One beautiful surprise of reading in English was how it connected me with people around the world. Online book clubs, reading communities, and language learners groups became places where I could share my thoughts. Even when my English wasn't perfect, people appreciated my effort, and those conversations helped me grow. Discussing books exposed me to perspectives I had never considered. Some people saw themes I had completely missed, while others explained cultural references that were new to me. Every conversation broadened my understanding, not only of English, but of the world itself. Reading also gave me confidence to talk to native speakers. Books have prepared me with vocabulary, expressions, and topics for conversations. I no longer felt nervous when speaking. I felt prepared. All those stories had built a bridge between languages and cultures. I found joy in recommending books to others. Some became favorites among my friends, and it felt amazing to see how reading inspired them too. The stories we read created a connection that went beyond language. We laughed at the same characters, debated the same decisions, and shared the same emotions. Through reading, I learned that language is more than communication, it's connection. Stories unite people, even those from different countries, cultures, and experiences. And that connection is one of the greatest rewards of learning English. Chapter 9. The Growth I Didn't Expect. After months of reading consistently, I realized that English had become a natural part of my life. I didn't study the language anymore. I lived it. I saw progress in areas I never expected. Sharper memory, stronger imagination, and faster thought processing. Reading was exercising my mind without me even realizing it. The language also helped me in school and work. I could understand instructions more easily and communicate ideas more clearly. Teachers and coworkers started relying on me for help with English tasks. It felt strange at first, remembering how lost I once felt, but it also made me incredibly proud. I noticed that my ability to focus improved. Books trained my mind to stay present, to follow stories carefully, and to understand details. This skill helped me in every area of my life. Reading strengthened my discipline and patience more than any other activity I had ever tried. Even my creativity expanded. I began imagining my own stories, picturing scenes, and inventing characters. Reading fed my imagination and inspired me to dream bigger. It opened doors I didn't even know existed.